Heard from my side of the story of what being an MK is like. But I wanted to ask Hannah about what it's like to be a PK. Hannah, what is it like to be a PK?
It's complicated having a parent for a pastor. And so for me, in the Church of the Nazarene, we affirm that both men and women are called to ministry and that God can call a man and a woman to any form. So there are plenty of female pastors out there who are also mothers. But in my case, my dad is my pastor as well, or was until I went to college, which is where I am right now. But yeah, so it can be complicated having a parent as your pastor. These are two very different roles, and when they're combined, the dynamic certainly changes, positively and negatively. I do recommend that any PK finds another person who can also be pastoral to them, but isn't their parent, because it's easier for me personally to speak to my dad about certain things as my parent, and harder to talk to him as my pastor about other things, and that can just be on a range of things. I would first suggest that the pastor's kid goes to the youth pastor and tries to build a relationship there and see if that works, or another pastor in the church, or just a good godly mentor. My mentor is Chris, love her to death. She's amazing back in Montana, and she really pours into me like that, as well as my youth leader Harry and his wife Tesha and so many others there. I'm just so grateful. Any other pastor in a church can provide more clear boundaries than what will and does occur between parents as a pastor when they're one and the same, but it's not a negative thing at all. I've loved having my dad as my pastor, and in some ways it's made it easier to tell my pastor some things that I needed to tell him, but it doesn't erase the complicity of that. And then I would like to quote my friend Eve from Eagle Nazarene Church. She's also a PK. Both of her parents are PKs, or pastors, and she says that what this kind of life feels like is that everyone is holding you to a higher standard, and you're not allowed to mess up, but you're also stereotyped to be a trouble kid, so you're expected to fail, but those standards are set like incredibly high.
Okay, I feel that. Sorry, that's a
No,
missionary kid thing. I
go
feel
for it.
I can echo and
That basically, in a lot of instances, she felt like she couldn't do anything right. But the upside is that it's also super awesome because you get full access to basically everything you want in the church, and you always know the youth group surprises before all your friends. Or in her case, anyway, I never did, but in her case. And I was also randomly talking to my friend Chris today in the decks, and he's also a PK, which I didn't know until our conversation. And he and I were talking, and I love when you meet another PK because you're just like, yeah, 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 and you just like go and like you understand each other. It's like this level of like familiarity and like friendships that have already been formed just because of your parents' occupation, which is so weird, but it's the truth. That's what happens. And we were talking, and something that Chris mentioned that I really wanted to put in this video, with his permission, of course, was that our parents have different experiences than we do, and they have different education than we do, and they have a different relationship with God than we do. Our parents, one, they've lived longer. They're wiser than us. And yeah, we need to admit that as kids. But for two, like, they have different experience. They've probably been in the ministry longer than we've been alive in most cases. So holding the children to the same standard as you would a pastor is not okay. When I first got to the church, my dad had to speak in the board meeting and saying that this church does not cut 3 paychecks, it cuts 1. You have expectations for me. These do not apply to my wife and my daughter in these ways because you're not paying them. You didn't hire them, you hired me. And I think that's something that every pastor needs to do, is to protect the family and protect the boundaries, because you can't have a healthy church and you can't have a healthy family if you don't set up appropriate boundaries. So anyway, so there's that experience. The education is I'm just finishing my first year of college, which is crazy stressful. Woo! But it's good, and I love college, and I recommend it even though it's not for everybody. But I just started college. My dad's had so much education, like so different than me. He has a lot more education there. He's much more knowledgeable than I am. But I shouldn't discount my own knowledge, my own experience. I've been in ministry for a long time. I've been learning for a long time. So there, I do have that, but I also, again, should not be held to the same standard of education that my dad should be held to. And then finally, my relationship with God is so different than my parents. And if I can like jump down to a question, advice to PKs, I'll answer that in more detail later. But your relationship with God needs to be your own. You can't ride on the coattails of your parents, but that also
Yes.
applies to any Christian. So honestly, I'm just talking to any of you who have Christian parents. Having a Christian parent and not having a relationship with God is not going to get you into heaven. You can't like hold on to their salvation and have them pull you along and through life. You have to have your own relationship with God.
How did you become a PK?
I was not born as a PK. I almost all of my PK friends, I don't actually think I have a PK friend who wasn't born as a PK. Like you talked about, a lot of missionary kids are born onto the mission field. I wasn't born as a PK or in the mission field. I was just born as a normal Christian baby, got dedicated in church my first Sunday, and barely missed any Sundays since. So I was definitely in a Christian household that took church going very seriously. But my dad didn't become a pastor until I was 11. Now, he was involved in different types of ministry, and he would preach occasionally in our church, and he preached at a nursing home, and he preached and ministered at a men's rescue mission in Colorado. And so my dad was in ministry, but it was incredibly different. So I know what it's like to be normal, and I know what it's like to be the PK. Very different. Oh my goodness, both have their own pros and cons to that. But yeah, so I was not originally a PK, became a PK at 11, and I moved from Colorado Springs to a really small town in Montana of 5,000 people, and that was quite the change for me.
So how would you describe the life of a PK to someone who's never who has no idea what it's like?
I think for the majority is that people who you don't know you, but they don't, and it's kind of weird. I'm trying to say this the best way possible. Is just that there's a difference between knowing someone and knowing trivia facts about that person.
Straight facts. I feel that. Oh my gosh.
There's a
Yes.
very, very big difference between that. And I have literally I'm also in a small town, so that this experience might be different than somebody who lives in a much bigger area than just 5,000 people. But I have literally had adults come up to me in the grocery store, just random people who I've never met before or don't remember meeting. They don't even look remotely familiar to me. And they're asking me very personal questions. And I'm like, do I know you? Like, this is so awkward. I'm trying not to be rude. I want to be friendly and happy as my normal self. But I don't want to answer these personal questions all the time. And another time, just random people come and be like, I know who your dad is. And I'm like, cool. Like, what am I supposed? I don't know how I'm supposed to respond to that. It's kind of awkward for me personally. I don't think people mean anything mean or bad by this at all. I just find it so funny that people don't realize that it's like your own kind of weird fame, and it's not always like appreciated. It's
Yeah, I wish it came with money too. I mean,
Dude,
come
if it
on.
came with money, that'd make it a lot
Yeah.
more. That would make it much more worth it.
Yeah.
But yeah, having a conversation with me, though I have no idea who this person is, I have no idea what they're talking about, and sometimes they walk away without even telling me who they are, or who they think I am, or how they think that they know me. That's weird. Like, it's like, I think a lot of it has to do with a small town, honestly. But yeah, that's weird. And I was doing some research into this. There's a guy who wrote a book about PKs, and I'll pop it up here because I don't have that written down. You should. But that kind of thing where so many people know you, but you don't really know them, especially in the brain of an adolescent, it can lead to like paranoia in extreme cases. It's like kind of just like, this is so creepy. That did not happen for me, but it can also lead to mistrust. And I have realized that it is harder for me just to trust people because I don't always know the angle that they're coming from.
Oh yeah.
If they're like coming to, like be friendly to me, or maybe minister to me, or maybe just build relationship, family of God, or if they're coming to me because they want something, they want dirt on my family, dirt on another person in the congregation.
Bouncing off of that, what is some of the best things about being a PK? I'm switching up the order here.
Yeah, is when a PK is a part of a healthy church and a healthy family, the church can end up really feeling like home to the PK. It can just feel really comforting, really homey, really nice. And it's like a safe place, a safe haven from the craziness that the world so often brings us. I think we've learned a lot about that in the past year and a half. Probably learn a lot more about that, but it's really great. And then it's like a gravitational pull back to the church in general, back to Christianity. And then Another, like, one of the best things about being a PK is you always have a theologian in the house. So, like, if you have, like, really deep spiritual questions, which I tend to have a lot of, because, woo, I can always go to him and be like, hey, you've had education. How would you answer this? Or how would you advise somebody of this? Or those sort of things. And it's so much fun. I'm kind of like a Bible nerd, though. But yeah, so some other, like, some other best things about being a PK is just I get really unique opportunities to build some really beautiful relationships, and I wouldn't have the opportunity to do that without my role as a PK, because I truly believe that the pastor, they have a ministry, but I believe the spouse of the pastor also has a very unique and different ministry, and I believe the children of the pastor and the spouse also have their own ministries first to the kids their age and like the youth group or the Sunday school class or whatever that looks like for them in that age group. But just in general, like, I've been able to minister to kids younger than me, my age, and then people who are older than me in really different ways, and I've been able to build some beautiful relationships. Like, the entire men's group are all my uncles now, like, no blood relation, but they're all my uncles, and the blood of Jesus is stronger than my blood anyway, so you know what, we're family, and I absolutely love that, and just having just, like, I spend so much extra time in the church building, and I know the church like the back of my hand, if not better, which is also kind of fun because when you play hide and seek with the youth group, you always know the best places to hide. You never get found, you always win. It's a plus. For this Christmas, I think people in our church, but also in our community, came out and made us this huge gift bag of Christmas things and left it on our front porch. Aww. And there was like they knew like the gifts inside the bag proved that they knew our family so well. Aww. And I was like getting over kidney stones, so I couldn't move, just sitting in the chair kind of all but it was so nice to have that. Made me feel a little bit more special too. My mom just kept pulling stuff out of this big bag because of the way I was sitting with my kidney stone, I couldn't see what was in the bag, so I literally felt like a 6-year-old, like, oh, there's just magic just keeps coming. It was great. But I felt so loved by the community and by the church, and it still blesses my heart. Like, I'm trying not to cry about it. Like, it was just so amazing. And like each little gift, like, they knew our family and they knew us and they cared about us, and it was more than just a church. Because something that my dad had always prayed about when we first got to Montana where we're ministering is just that he wanted to be a pastor for the community and not just a church. That we would break the church bubble and that we would truly have ministry within every aspect of our little town, and it's been beautiful.
And I'm gonna ask a question that we can totally delete later. This is totally off script, but I just thought
I love
of
it. Improv too.
As you're speaking. So you mentioned how PKs, how you kind of have your own ministry as a kid. And this is kind of like, maybe this is intrusive, like trauma stuff. But
ask away, girl.
Is it your responsibility as a kid to have to do ministry? That's
a good question.
Is it fair to the child to have that pressure on them, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and it also kind of ties into some of like the harder parts about being a PK that I want to mention too, is that there can be a sense of responsibility to minister, and there can be a sense of like, this is my job, or like for me, I felt like personally that like I mattered less than the church as a whole because I was one person and I was doing okay, and the church had so many needs, and that's okay. It was beautiful. I love the church. I love that my family, and I wanted to put them first. But I had to realize that like I was equally as valuable as anybody else, and that I didn't deserve to get pushed to the side. But my parents never pushed me to the side, but it was something that I had to be like, okay, I don't need to do that to myself. There's a difference between being selfless and serving God and being self-destructive. Yes. And I think that's a very fine line to walk. And then the responsibility aspect of the ministry. I love ministry. I've chosen to devote my life to ministry. I'll be sharing my testimony later in this channel in the coming months. And honestly, I'll just share a piece of it now. I did not want anything to do with the ministry. I had seen it. I had a front row seat, and I was like, you know what? That's cool. That's great. I'm going this way. Complete 180, right? I was still in love with God. Still do want to marry a Christian man. Still want to raise our kids in the church, you know. But I didn't see myself doing anything more than volunteering for potlucks and VBS, Vacation Bible School. But God radically changed my heart's desire and passion, and then now I can't imagine doing anything other than ministry for the rest of my life. But that was really hard, and I think that I felt like that because I was a PK and I was so closed off to it. because there is a lot of responsibility there. I did have one man, he came up, he cornered me in the library, and it was very inappropriate. But he came up to me and wouldn't let me leave the library. And he made me feel like I wasn't allowed to be a child, and that I needed to, I was expected to work for free. I needed to watch kids for free. I needed to do dishes for free. I needed to cut the grass for free. I needed to clean up the leaves for free. And this man, he was a PK at one point in his younger life. And I think his father was a pastor, and his dad allowed his kids, allowed people in the church to use his kids as free laborers, and I don't think that's appropriate. I think that crosses a line, a boundary. My father agrees with me. He never allowed me to have to deal with that, which I'm very grateful for. There weren't people who wanted to do that in my church except maybe him, and I mean no disrespect to him, but I want to be raw and honest and vulnerable and transparent with you. And that was hard for me to grasp and to understand, and I think a lot of the negative stereotypes, going to like the hardest thing about being a PK is fighting those, is that they exist, at least in part, because of parenting styles or lack thereof healthy ones that existed within a lot of PK households, like that gentleman's, and they're just not healthy, and they need to be cut, they need to be broken, that needs to be done differently.
Yeah.
And so that's what I plan to do in the future, because I'm devoting my life to ministry, so I've learned a lot as a PK to hopefully, lead my kids through that, essentially, I guess, some kind of ministry child. I don't exactly know what I'll be, but,
Yeah.
Alright, take two!
And you're watching Disney Channel.
Yeah, because we're clearly actresses for Disney. Alright, take two.
Oh gosh.
Oh! Books fell. Take three. Okay. Heather, what are we doing today?
I get to interview
As the books fall again.
Oh, it's our janky college kid.
Today?
I am interrogating her.
Interrogating me?
I'm interviewing her.
Getting way off topic, so I'm sorry. That's horrible.
Yes, it's okay, but can you tell that she wants to be a preacher?
There's another, I have a funny story that I may edit out, but I'm going to tell it right now because I can't. So I used to work at McDonald's. I absolutely hated that job. It was a summer job. So glad when it's over, between my freshman and sophomore year of high school. And so I worked for those 3 months at McDonald's. And this one lady came up to the counter and I was taking orders. So I said, "Hi, how can I help you?" And this was pre-COVID, so she could see my face, no mask. And she was like, "Are you the daughter of the Nazarenes?" And right as she asked this question, my boss walks right behind me and stops to hear my answer. And she's like, "Are you the daughter of all Nazarenes?" And I jokingly, was trying to make fun of it, like jokingly, like, "Yes, ma'am, I'm the daughter of all Nazarenes everywhere. How may I take your order?" And it was so awkward. And looking back, I realized that, that could have sounded really rude, and that was not my intent. I was just trying to be funny, kind of make light of the situation, because I felt so awkward. And my boss was listening, which was really weird, but and just being able to be like, "Yes, I represent all Nazarenes everywhere," was a lot of pressure, and I feel like that's more a MK thing than it is a PK thing, but it happened.
Yes.
But it also gave me a great opportunity 2 weeks later to be able to share the gospel with my boss, because he asked me, "What the heck is a Nazarene?" And we just got to have a really great conversation, so I'm really grateful for that. But yeah, daughter of all Nazarenes everywhere, apparently. So are you, I guess.